Hi, it's Katrina. Welcome back. What does the Sumerian Dracula have in common with a Babylonian werewolf? Both are some of the earliest monsters used to scare people around the campfire. Here are some wild discoveries that will change the way you look at history.
The real Sumerian Dracula.
Before Count Dracula, before the fanged aristocrats of Gothic fiction, before Satan himself, there were the vampires of Sumer. They were the OG soul-draining spirits that kickstarted the whole undead nightmare. You won't believe how vampires really got their start.
Did you know that Scotland originally had dancing vampires? It's true. They were known as the Bavan Sith. But trust me, you would not want to tango with these horrifying bloodsuckers. The dancing vamps of the Scottish Highlands were seen as evil fairies. Locals called them the White Women of the Highlands. Unlike your classic vampire, shrouded in a dark cape and whispering in a vague Eastern European accent, the Bavan Sith were always beautiful young women. They appeared to their victims dressed in long green gowns and oozing sensuality. It was really easy for them to seduce male victims and suck their blood. If the men had taken a closer look, they would have noticed the deer hooves where their seductress's feet should have been. In Scotland, the original vampires were half women, half deer creatures. They lured unsuspecting hunters, travelers, and pilgrims into their clutches. They also didn't have fangs. Instead, they used their razor-sharp fingernails to slice open their victims and drain them. Instead of hypnotic stares, they seduced their prey through dance, hence the whole dancing vampire thing. It was less, I want to suck your blood, and more, may I have this dance and also your life force? And instead of turning into bats, Bavan Sith shapeshifted into wolves, ravens, and crows. However, they weren't as powerful in animal form since they couldn't use their beauty to deceive people.
The big similarity between the gorgeous lady vampires of Scottish myth and the big baddie Dracula is that they both needed to rest in their coffin come dawn.
The dancing vampires were also really easy to defeat. A simple piece of iron, like a horseshoe, placed on their grave could keep them at bay. A simple piece of iron? That's all it took? It's funny how these terrifying creatures often have such specific vulnerabilities. But long before Scotland's vampire menace, there was the Sumerian monster known as Edimu. Scholars agree that Edimu was the very first vampire ever. The Edimu were part vampire, part ghost. The Sumerians believed them to be spirits of the dead who had been cursed or denied proper burial rites.
If you didn't get a proper send-off, your soul would rise as one of these shadowy creatures. And when you rose hungry.
The Edimu were known for passing through walls, possessing people, and causing plagues. They were bringing pestilence to the humans thousands of years before Nosferatu. The first tales of Sumerian vampires could be upwards of 5,000 years old. Perhaps most terrifyingly, the Edimu drained their victims' energy while they slept. This is a theme that would later appear in vampire folklore across the world, from the Hindu monster Preta to the Chinese energy stealer Jiangxi. It was an energy vampire, not a blood-sucking vampire. The Sumerians started the idea that neglecting religious duties or defying moral codes could turn you into a monster. Whether it was the heretics of medieval Europe, the wicked souls of Babylon, or the men who danced with the Bavan Sith, the message was the same. If you stray from the righteous path, you risk losing your soul.
What are your thoughts on the real origin of vampires? Did you know they went back so far? Let me know in the comments.
Were the Anunnaki mythical gods or space aliens?
It's one of the oldest debates in history. Forget the chicken and the egg. This is the real age-old question. Were the Anunnaki divine beings worshipped by the Sumerians? Or were they, as some claim, extraterrestrial visitors with a serious case of gold fever and a penchant for genetic tinkering? Listen to this and then let me know what you think.
Let's check out the original winged superstars of Mesopotamia. Long before the Greeks were writing soap operas about Zeus and his dramatic love life, long before the Egyptians were carving stories of Osiris into pyramids, the Sumerians of ancient Mesopotamia were worshipping a pantheon of mysterious winged deities known as the Anunnaki. Unlike Zeus, who liked to stay perched atop Mount Olympus, the Anunnaki lived in the uppermost heavens and made occasional pit stops on Earth to dictate human destiny. Talk about micromanaging. These deities weren't just celestial observers. They were hands-on when it came to shaping human affairs.
The Sumerians depicted them in fascinating ways. Some had wings, some wore horned hats, and a few even had what looked suspiciously like modern handbags. Seriously, what were they carrying? Celestial car keys, snack for the road, the secret to immortality?
According to mythology, the Anunnaki descended from An, the sky god, and Ki, the earth goddess. The specifics of how many gods there were and what they did tend to get a little hazy, as historical texts vary widely on the details. One of their more famous family squabbles involved Enlil, who decided that heaven and earth needed a breakup. He split them apart, taking Earth for himself, while his father, An, kept the skies. It was the first ever real estate dispute. Down on Earth, Enlil had his hands full with the ancient Sumerians. They were some serious innovators. Their civilization thrived between 4500 and 1750 BC and laid the groundwork for modern society. The Sumerians walked so we could sit around and watch YouTube.
They developed one of the earliest writing systems known as cuneiform. They had an advanced understanding of time and even invented the plow.
Not to mention their cities, each built around ziggurats. Ziggurats were the original pyramids, huge layered triangles with flat tops dedicated to the Anunnaki. Imagine stepping into a world where entire communities revolved around serving their temple gods. And this went on for thousands of years across many civilizations.
Over time, religious rulers were replaced by kings, but the Anunnaki remained central to Sumerian culture.
Now, here's where things get interesting. Some modern researchers and fringe theorists, including Michael Cremo, Zecharia Sitchin, Eric von Daniken, and Michael Tellinger, believe the Anunnaki weren't just mythical gods. They were, in fact, extraterrestrials who came to Earth on a mission. It was a mission with repercussions that reverberated across the universe. The Anunnaki were advanced aliens who genetically engineered humans as a slave species to mine gold. Apparently, they needed gold for their home planet. These theorists argue that many ancient texts hint at flying machines and advanced technology that would have been impossible for early civilizations to create alone. Tellinger claimed the Anunnaki introduced humans to the joys of money, finance, and debt. Gee, thanks guys! And they may have also been responsible for constructing mysterious megastructures like the pyramids or even Stonehenge. Mainstream historians and scholars aren't buying what Sitchin and his fellow sci-fi theorists are selling. Critics argue that these ideas stem from mistranslations and misinterpretations of Sumerian texts. Just because an ancient carving looks like a spaceship doesn't mean it is one, or does it? Sitchin took things a step further, claiming that the Anunnaki hailed from a mysterious planet called Nibiru, aka Planet X. This mystery planet orbits the sun every 10,000 to 20,000 years. NASA, however, has politely labeled this planet as hypothetical.
The Anunnaki remain one of history's greatest enigmas, fueling debates between archaeologists, historians, and those who firmly believe that ancient aliens walked among us. Whose side are you on? Let me know your theories in the comments. And now for a quick break, because I want to give a big thank you to Terry Stevens for the super thanks. It really means a lot, and we wouldn't be here without you. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to join the Origins Explained family, because why not?
The Werewolf of Mesopotamia.
Let's go back to ancient Sumer 4,000 years ago to the realm of Mesopotamia. But be sure to bring some silver bullets, because we are fighting the original werewolf.
More than 1,000 years before the Old Testament, a different kind of book was written. It's considered one of the oldest complete narratives penned by a human. You've undoubtedly heard of it before, the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's an epic poem that contains stories that would later be ripped off by the authors of the Bible. Okay, maybe inspired by is a better term, but the similarities are uncanny. The Epic of Gilgamesh has the original story of Noah and the Great Flood. The book is also filled with tales of gods and kings, and there is one story in particular that I want to tell you about today. It's about a human turning into a werewolf. In the ancient tale, Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk, is having a romantic moment with the goddess Ishtar when things get a little awkward. Ishtar tries to woo him, but Gilgamesh's response is cold. Gilgamesh, who was like the Hercules of Babylon, was not about to be seduced by the goddess. In fact, he threw shade at her for all her previous failed relationships. The passage goes something like this. You loved the shepherd, the master herder who fed you bread baked in embers and slaughtered a kid daily just for you. Yet you struck him and turned him into a wolf, so his own shepherds chased him, and his own dogs snapped at his shins. Bad things would happen to the men who loved the goddess. It seems Gilgamesh was giving Ishtar a hard time for turning her last boyfriend into a beast. A werewolf beast. No wonder Gilgamesh wasn't down to frolic with someone who turns men into monsters.
Assyriologist Julius Aubert said it was standard for the ancient Assyrians to think that werewolves were real. There may even be a psychological reason for it.
King Nebuchadnezzar II, who ruled Babylon in the 6th century BC and built the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, may have had a disorder called lycanthropy. According to psychiatric experts Harvey Rosenstock and Kenneth R. Vincent, Nebuchadnezzar's downward spiral into madness led him to believe he was literally a wolf for 7 years. It's a story that appears briefly in the Bible. Lycanthropy is a real disorder in which a person believes themselves to be a wolf, and apparently it's been around for at least 2,500 years, maybe even more. Nebuchadnezzar is said to have gone so insane because of his lycanthropy that his empire crumbled while he hobbled around on all fours and howled at the moon. Paul of Aegina, a Greek physician from the 7th century, recorded the first known medical description of lycanthropy as a mental illness. He also linked lycanthropy to an old Greek myth about King Lycaon of Arcadia. In the myth, Lycaon tried to trick Zeus by serving him a meal made of human flesh. Ugh. Zeus was not pleased by being tricked into eating human meat, and as punishment, he turned Lycaon into a wolf. Pliny the Elder, another ancient scholar, wrote about a man from the Antaeus family who turned into a wolf for 9 years. He was only allowed to turn back into a human because he didn't bite anyone during his years as a wolf.
And of course, I can't forget Herodotus, the father of history. He mentioned werewolf legends in his masterpiece titled Histories. Herodotus said there was a group of people called Onuri. They supposedly turned into wolves once a year.
By the time the Middle Ages rolled around, werewolves were everywhere. They were being blamed for all kinds of mischief throughout Europe, from sorcery to heresy. Olaus Magnus, a Swedish Catholic in the 16th century, called werewolves an accursed college. Yeah, I don't get it either. I think it was a weird way of calling werewolves rebel wizards, because basically werewolves were seen as evil mages or witches. It was only a matter of time until werewolf legends got tangled up with vampire legends. If you were executed for being a werewolf, sometimes they would burn your body to stop you from rising from the grave as a vampire. Medieval peasants were so obsessed with these folklore monsters they could hardly tell them apart. In Serbia, they combined werewolves and vampires into the frightening Vukodlak. The Arabs had their own werewolf too, called the Kutru. This creature was a mix of a man and a wolf, only worse because it liked to feast on corpses.
But in the end, they all spawned from the first ever werewolf story told in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Almost all Hollywood horrors and monsters of legends can be traced back to Mesopotamia. Would you rather fight a werewolf or a vampire? Let me know.
The place where time flows backwards.
Breaking news! NASA has discovered a parallel universe. So strap into your time machines and get ready to undo all of your biggest mistakes, starting with not eating that gas station hot dog.
If you've been scrolling through the latest headlines, you might have seen that NASA just confirmed a sci-fi first, a parallel universe where time runs backwards. Sounds cool, right? But before we all start drafting time travel conspiracy theories, let's get to the actual science. The news has been a little misleading. The wild headlines floating around in tabloids like the Daily Star and the New York Post are mostly quoting each other in an infinite loop of misinformation. What actually happened is that scientists working in Antarctica detected some strange, high-energy particles that don't fit our current understanding of physics. No one opened a portal to another dimension or cracked time travel. That being said, these new particles might be the first step in opening one such portal. This whole frenzy started with a research balloon experiment called ANITA, which listens for cosmic rays bouncing off the ice. In 2016, ANITA picked up some bizarre signals that seemed to come up from the Earth instead of down from space. That's weird because, in theory, these high-energy particles, neutrinos, shouldn't behave that way. A follow-up research paper suggested a possible explanation for the weird behavior of the neutrinos. They could be the result of a CPT symmetric universe. That's science speak for a hypothetical mirror universe that formed at the Big Bang. In this symmetric universe, everything is reversed, including time.
It's trippy, I know. Theoretically, one could enter the symmetric universe, travel backwards in time, and then exit back into the normal universe in the past.
Scientists at the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory, also in Antarctica, are not on board with the symmetric universe theory. Alex Pizzuto and Anastasia Barbano ruled out the parallel universe idea. Their research instead suggests the odd signals could be due to experimental limitations, interactions with Antarctic ice, or something they just don't understand yet.
But where does that leave people like us who want to travel through time? It leaves us with our thumbs out on the side of the road. Anyone have a spare DeLorean we can borrow? Asking for a friend, who is me. I guess we'll just have to wait a little longer for interdimensional travel.
A world ruled by reptiles.
Have you ever wondered what would happen if dinosaurs evolved into smart, scaly overlords and took over the world? If so, you're in for a real treat. Buckle up, Buttercup, because we're about to get prehistoric with our hypotheticals.
65 million years ago, an asteroid took out the dinosaurs and cleared the way for us hairy mammals to take over. But what if the giant space rock had missed? Would we be sharing Wi-Fi passwords with talking velociraptors? Would Wall Street be run by cold-blooded lizard people? The answer is almost certainly yes. Say hello to President T. Rex Johnson. In 1982, paleontologist Dale Russell took this what-if scenario to the next level. He proposed that if evolution had been given just a smidgen more time, a highly intelligent dinosaur might have evolved into something eerily human-like.
That dinosaur would have likely been Troodon, one of the brainiest dinos that ever lived. The result of this dinosaur evolution would have been a humanoid lizard creature, something possibly called Troodon sapiens.
Troodon wasn't your average dinosaur. It had big eyes, an impressive brain-to-body ratio, and maybe even the cognitive chops of a modern-day bird. Try to picture a velociraptor as smart as a parrot, then give it enough time to evolve even more. Russell imagined that with a few more million years of evolution, these dinos could have developed advanced societies, invented technology, and maybe even debated whether pineapple belongs on pizza. Basically, the dinosaur equivalent of a child prodigy, but with more scales and less awkward piano recitals. To bring this vision of an alternate universe to life, Russell teamed up with sculptor Ron Seguin, who designed a model of this hypothetical dinosaur. Together, they created a monster with an upright stance, large eyes, no tail, no teeth, and 3 fingers on each hand for scrolling through Instagram and holding tools. Wait, no teeth? That's not even the weirdest part. Russell and Ron gave their creation a belly button, suggesting their hypothetical dinosaur Lex Luthor evolved to be viviparous and birth live young.
Now here's a crazy idea. What if this did happen? You know those reptilian overlords people say are secretly running the world? What if they are the real dinosaur that Russell tried to warn us about?
Oregon's weird meteorite mystery. A lost treasure, cries of a hoax, and one big space rock caught in the middle. This is the story of a 10-ton meteorite found in the Oregon wilderness and the man who nobody believed was telling the truth. The man, the myth, and the meteorite. In the 1850s, the U.S. Department of the Interior sent John Evans, a New Hampshire doctor turned geologist, on a survey mission in Oregon. Now, Evans wasn't exactly a seasoned rock expert. His background was in medicine, but that didn't stop him from making what would become one of the most mysterious claims in American geological history. While exploring southwestern Oregon, Evans said he found a giant meteorite near Bald Mountain, about 40 miles from Port Orford. According to his field reports, the object was so big that it would have cost $3,000 to transport it down the mountain. That was a boatload of money back then. Instead of hauling it back, Evans broke off a piece and sent it for analysis. Word of the discovery spread fast. The Port Orford meteorite was hailed as a monumental find, with some newspapers claiming it was the largest space rock ever found in the US. Naturally, this kicked off a gold rush-style meteorite hunt. Imagine the chaos! People tripping over each other, armed with pickaxes and dreams of cosmic riches. It didn't take long until Evans had some seriously peeved prospectors on his hands. Despite multiple expeditions, some of them even guided by Evans himself, no one could find the meteorite. His field journal provided no maps, no landmarks, no coordinates. All Evans offered were vague descriptions of the area. It was like trying to find a needle in a haystack, only this needle weighed 10 tons and should have been dang easy to spot. Then Evans died in 1861, taking any real knowledge of the meteorite's location with him. But the search didn't stop there. In the 1920s, the Smithsonian Institution retraced Evans' steps, hoping to finally locate the legendary space rock. Leading the search was Edward Henderson, curator of meteorites, who spent decades chasing the mystery. Nobody ever found anything. By 1964, after years of failure, Henderson finally declared the Port Orford meteorite a hoax. After all that, even today, people scour the forests of southern Oregon hoping to find the legendary meteorite. Some believe it's buried beneath a landslide. Others think it was never there in the first place. If Evans lied, what was the point? In the 1990s, things got spooky. Historian Howard Plotkin decided to take one last crack at solving the case. Howard teamed up with metallurgists Van Butchwald and Roy Clark from the Smithsonian. Together, they analyzed the original meteorite sample that Evans had submitted. What they found was amazing. The sample didn't come from Oregon at all. It matched the composition of a meteorite field in Chile's Atacama Desert, discovered in the 1820s. Evans submitted a piece of Chilean space rock. But why? Come on, Evan, what were you thinking? The general assumption today is that Evans was broke. He may have purchased the meteorite sample while traveling through Panama in 1858, where space rocks were often sold as souvenirs. Then he made up the story to try and get rich. What a weird hoax to come up with. Don't go anywhere, because next up we'll be exploring the healing powers of a mysterious European pyramid. This pyramid can heal you. Do you need a magical cure for all your pain and problems? I might have a solution for you. When you think of pyramids, your mind probably jumps to Egypt, right? But hold on to your energy crystals, because Bosnia has its own set of pyramids, possibly the oldest on Earth. And they're not just sitting there looking majestic. They might be buzzing with electromagnetic energy and healing powers. The most famous of these rumored structures is the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. Some think it's nothing but an ordinary mountain with trees on it, but some experts think it's a pyramid that nature has taken over. According to studies by Dr. Harry Oldfield, the so-called pyramid's electromagnetic fields behave in a way that has left scientists scratching their heads. Normally, electromagnetic fields over natural hills and mountains are horizontally oriented, but not here. The fields over the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun shoot up vertically, as if the structure itself is beaming energy straight into the sky. Dr. Slobodan Mizrak, a Croatian physicist, measured a peculiar ultrasonic frequency of 28 kilohertz emerging from the top of the pyramid. This aligns with Dr. Oldfield's findings and suggests that something deep beneath the pyramid is generating this energy beam. It's about 7,000 feet below the surface. What's down there? A power plant? An ancient Wi-Fi router? Scientists don't know, but desperately want to find out. If you thought an energy beam wasn't enough, Croatian scientists also detected a light beam coming from the top of the pyramid. Actual light. This phenomenon has been recorded before, most notably at El Castillo in Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Coincidence or evidence of an ancient global network of high-tech pyramids? For years, people visiting the Bosnian pyramids have claimed to experience healing effects, and science might back that up. Researchers have detected an abnormally high concentration of negative ions in the underground tunnels near the pyramids. Negative ions are known to clean the air of pollutants and have been linked to various health benefits, including improved mood and respiratory function. Forget spa retreats, just book a trip to Bosnia and take a deep breath. Okay, but how old exactly is the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun? Older than the Anunnaki, if carbon dating is to be believed. In 2012, Italian archaeologists Dr. Riccardo Brett and Niccolo Visconti found organic material in the blocks of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. Carbon-14 dating placed the structure's age at least 24,000 years old. That means this pyramid existed long before the wheel, agriculture, or even written history. Could this be proof of an ancient civilization with advanced knowledge, or are these natural formations playing tricks on our scientific instruments? The chariot wheel and the biblical Exodus. For decades, a claim has been floating around that actual chariot wheels have been discovered at the bottom of the Red Sea, proving the biblical account of Exodus. It's time to find out how real these claims are. The story of Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt is one of the most famous events in religious history. According to the Bible, Moses stretched out his hand, the sea parted, and the Israelites walked across on dry land. Then the Pharaoh's army got absolutely wrecked when the waters came crashing down. I introduce you now to Ron Wyatt, an amateur archaeologist and Bible explorer. In 1978, Ron was flying over the Gulf of Aqaba, the Red Sea, when he spotted Nuweiba Beach in Egypt. Something clicked in his head. He thought the area looked exactly like the place where the Israelites would have been trapped before crossing the Red Sea. Wyatt made his way to the beach and, after some investigating, stumbled upon something intriguing. He said he found a stone monument on the Egyptian side of the Red Sea and an identical one on the other side. Some believe King Solomon erected these mysterious stones as a memorial to the Exodus. Wyatt and his team allegedly found gold-plated chariot wheels, axles, and even human and horse bones scattered across the sea floor. According to him, coral had covered the chariots over time, preserving their shape like an underwater time capsule. If true, this would be one of the most astonishing archaeological discoveries in history. But that's a big if. While Wyatt's claims are exciting, they have been met with significant skepticism from professional archaeologists and historians. There is no verified scientific documentation. No major academic institutions or archaeological bodies have confirmed his chariot wheel discoveries. All we have to go on is his word. Is that enough for you? Doodling with dinosaurs. A prehistoric cold case has just been reopened. The evidence? Dinosaur footprints. And some seriously intriguing ancient artwork. The scene of the crime? Brazil. There is a mystery unfolding that has scientists ready to faint. Researchers recently uncovered an incredible site in Brazil's Serrote do Letreiro, where prehistoric humans decided to jazz up the landscape with rock art placed suspiciously close to dinosaur footprints. 9,400 years ago, a prehistoric culture became obsessed with monster footprints from 145 million to 66 million years ago. Honestly, can you blame them? I mean, we're still obsessed. They drew petroglyphs of circles, lines, and other geometric shapes all around the imprints left by a variety of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs like theropods or meat lovers, sauropods, long-necked herbivores, and ornithopods, the dino versions of today's emus. Leonardo Troiano, an archaeologist from Brazil's National Institute of Historic and Artistic Heritage, led a recent study on the prints. He and his team suspect that these ancient artists didn't just stumble upon dino prints and start doodling for fun. The placements were intentional. But what were prehistoric people thinking when they made this artwork around the fossilized dinosaur prints? Let me know your guesses in the comments. The first European vampire. The chilling tale of the first European bloodsucker is going to leave you chilled to your core. The case of Peter Plagojevich is one of the best documented incidents of vampire hysteria ever recorded. It has everything you could ever want in a vampire story. Mysterious deaths, blood-drained victims, and a very hangry undead farmer. The story takes place in 1725 in the little village of Kisiljevo, Serbia, where a farmer named Peter did what farmers do best. He worked hard, lived his life, and then died. That was the short and sweet of it in the 1700s. Peasant life was kind of a huge bummer. Peter did something he wasn't supposed to, though. He didn't stay dead. Just 3 days after his burial, Peter strolled right back into town like he had unfinished business. He showed up like he wasn't dead the day before and went straight to his son's house. Do you know what he asked for when he banged on the door? Not blood, but food. Peter was starving. and his awestruck son wasn't about to deny his resurrected pa a bowl of peasant stew. Shaken, Peter's son gave his dad some food and then told him to beat it. "Get out of here, you zombie!" Superstition ran wild in rural Serbia, and no one came back from the dead without some nefarious thing tied to them. When Peter came back the next night, still hungry, his son put his foot down. No more midnight snacks for the undead. Sorry, wrong move. The next morning, Peter's son was found dead, but the horror had only just begun. Over the next few days, 9 more villagers mysteriously dropped dead. Each one complained of exhaustion before their deaths and appeared to have lost a concerning amount of blood. And just to crank up the creep factor, they all reported having nightmares about Peter visiting them. The Peter who was supposed to be in the afterlife. Fearing an apocalyptic vampire takeover, the parish priest wrote to the local magistrate, who wasted no time alerting a nearby commander of Imperial troops. Soon, a team of officers and an executioner arrived to get to the bottom of this undead nightmare. The vampire hunt was on. With torches in hand and probably a lot of nervous side eyes, the investigators dug up the bodies of all 10 recent victims, including Peter. And holy smokes, they did not like what they found. Peter's body was freakishly well preserved. His skin was fresh, his nails had grown into claws, and his mouth was covered in blood. How much more proof do you need that Peter was a vampire? In modern times, scientists would accept Peter's strange condition as part of the natural decomposition process. But in 1725, yeah, right. Peter's ghoulish body was seen as obvious proof of vampirism. What do you suppose the next logical step was? I'll give you a hint. It involved a stake through the heart. The executioner did what any self-respecting vampire hunter would do. He drove a wooden stake straight through Peter's dead chest. And because this story wasn't dramatic enough already, blood and liquid gushed out everywhere. To be extra sure that Peter didn't rise for a second encore, they burned his body to ash. Then they reburied the rest of the victims, but not before stuffing their graves with garlic and whitethorn to stop them from turning into a vampire like Peter. And just like that, Peter's reign of terror was over. But was Peter really to blame for an undead rampage? Or was this a classic case of mass hysteria brought on by a sudden spread of disease? Maybe keep a little garlic in your house, just in case.
Thanks for watching! Be sure to stay tuned for extra content you might have missed. Djoser Pyramid. The Egyptians built their first pyramid, known to us today as the Step Pyramid of Djoser, around 4,700 years ago in the ancient necropolis of Saqqara. Djoser was the first king of Egypt's third dynasty. His vizier, Imhotep, diverted from traditional building methods and materials by designing a 6-layered, 197-foot-high stone pyramid, far unlike the rectangular dry clay brick monuments that were customary at the time. It's one of many structures that Djoser commissioned during his reign, but it's certainly the most well-known among them. Beneath the pyramid is a 3.5-mile-long series of tunnels. At the center of the labyrinth is a deep shaft containing Djoser's burial chamber. Curiously, his tomb is rather simple compared to other rulers, lacking the ornamentation that was characteristic of a king's resting place. 11 of Djoser's daughters were also laid to rest inside the pyramid, a unique first of Egypt's Old Kingdom, according to former Minister of Antiquities Zahi Hawass. The structure sits on a 37-acre complex surrounded by a 30-foot-high wall that contains 13 false doors and 1 authentic entrance. A 131-foot-wide trench was built around the wall as an added security feature against unwanted visitors, and there are numerous dummy buildings throughout the complex to further confuse anyone who might manage to get inside. Also at the site is a pair of buildings called the House of the North and the House of the South, whose purpose is unknown. Another structure, the South Tomb, contains a chapel, but is also a mystery. One of the site's most mysterious buildings, known as Temple T, has a very basic exterior with a contrasting, intricate interior. The builders' reasons and inspiration for the unique features of the pyramid and complex, beyond obvious security measures, are unknown. Researchers are still trying to solve these mysteries, from the simplicity of Djoser's burial chamber to the seemingly bland building that is shockingly elegant on the inside. UFO sightings in Idaho. Idaho ranked as the #1 state for UFO sightings in 2020, tallying up an impressive, or perhaps troubling, 164 reports of strange objects seen in the sky. Some of these sightings can be easily explained. For instance, people around the world have been baffled by SpaceX's Starlink satellites, which seem like an otherworldly string of white lights passing through the sky. At least one person reported seeing one in Idaho last year, and it's likely that people around the globe will begin to see them more often, as nearly 900 have been launched so far as part of SpaceX's vision to provide internet to the entire world. Other accounts of UFO sightings are less explainable, with concerned citizens phoning into the National UFO Reporting Center with reports of black discs and other unidentified aircraft flying overhead. Science journalist Sarah Scholes told the Post-Register that a lot of weird stuff goes on in the sky and that it probably isn't alien spaceships. But what is it then? Oddly, as Scholes pointed out, the widespread interest in UFOs is not limited to conspiracy theorists. The U.S. government and reputable researchers are surprisingly invested in learning more about these sightings, and she thinks she knows why, stating, "The thing that people tend to have in common who get obsessed with this topic is just that it's a persistent mystery that needs a solution." The U.S. government is also very interested in knowing who is flying objects over the U.S. sky. If it isn't them, it is definitely someone else. World's oldest bridge. In the early 20th century, archaeologists in Girzu, Iraq, discovered a monumental brick structure that was huge, but they had no idea what it was, so they called it the enigmatic construction. Girzu was once the center of a large city-state in ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. This is one of the earliest known cities in the world. Now known as Tello, it was built during the 3rd millennium BC, around 4,000 years ago, and was rediscovered in 1929. There is much we still don't know about ancient Mesopotamia and the Sumerians, including how they were able to change our nomadic ways and create a settled civilization with advanced agricultural engineering, writing, mathematics, and medicine. 50,000 cuneiform tablets have been recovered, as well as incredible examples of pottery and jewelry. This brick structure with references to gods was believed to be a temple, a dam, or even a water regulator. Archaeologists are continuously making new discoveries about the Mesopotamians, and now, thanks to modern technology and satellites, the mystery of the enigmatic construction may have finally been solved. British Museum archaeologist Sebastian Ray was able to identify traces of an ancient water canal that passed directly through the structure thanks to excavations and satellite imagery. The structure was actually a bridge and is considered to be the world's oldest bridge and an amazing example of ancient engineering on a grand scale. It bottlenecked the 100-foot waterway down to just 12 feet wide and served as a path to the city's sacred district, where religious pilgrims traveled for festivals. It was so large because it had the same significance as a temple or a city wall. It was meant to be seen from afar. For the past 90 years, the bridge has fallen victim to warfare and the elements. The British Museum and the Iraq State Board of Antiquities are working together to restore and preserve the heavily damaged structure in hopes of eventually attracting tourism to the region. White Island mining disaster. Wakari, also known as White Island, is New Zealand's most active volcano. It's located roughly 30 miles off the east coast of the country's North Island. In September 1914, part of the volcano's crater wall collapsed, triggering a landslide that sent mud and rock gushing into the lake below. All 11 sulfur miners on the island at the time were buried alive in the disaster. A search party failed to recover the bodies, and all the buildings were missing, except for part of the site manager's house. Over time, debris began washing up, but the dead themselves and the contents of their homes were never found. Nobody even knows for sure what day the tragedy occurred, since the destruction was not noticed until days after. Scientists initially assumed that the rubble blocked the volcano's main vent, leading to a huge eruption, but they now doubt that an eruption ensued after the landslide. Not knowing the exact circumstances of the event added to the devastation for the sole surviving widow of the men, the rest of whom were single. When she filed for insurance compensation, the claim was thrown out on the basis of her not being able to prove what caused her husband's death, or that it happened while he was working. The events leading up to the disaster aren't the only mystery surrounding it. White Island Tours searched for descendants of the victims in 2014 and had little luck. Only one known possible connection was found when a man came forward saying that he believes his wife is related to one of the deceased laborers. While only 3 of the men had children, it is certainly possible that other relatives are out there, but their identities remain unknown for now. Bosnia Pyramids. Amateur archaeologist Sam Osmanagic made headlines in 2008 with his adamant claims that the world's oldest and largest pyramids are actually in Bosnia, near the city of Visoko. He insisted that they were built 12,000 years ago by an advanced ancient society, and his stories about them became increasingly more abstract in the following years. Experts denounced Osmanagic's claims, pointing out that he had no valid evidence to back them up, and that the so-called pyramids are merely a group of distinctively shaped natural hills. Meanwhile, the armchair archaeologist upped the ante, stating that the mounds were built atop the most extensive network of underground tunnels ever discovered, and that the largest pyramid was built using an advanced type of concrete that supersedes modern construction materials. If you ask Osmanagic, these controversial peaks are energy amplifiers that enhance health and longevity. In an interview with Discover magazine, Boston University archaeologist Curtis Runnels said all of the finds being made by Osmanagic are either natural features like rocks or the result of long occupation in these valleys by people since the Greco-Roman period. As it turns out, this wasn't Osmanagic's first rodeo with making fantastical declarations. In one book he published before gaining worldwide publicity over his pyramid claims, he wrote that the ancient Maya civilization originated in the Pleiades constellation, and that their first stop on Earth was Atlantis. Numerous researchers from various disciplines, including geologists, archaeologists, and other scientists, have investigated Osmanagic's tall tales, but they found nothing to explain beyond the natural processes that formed the hills. Encoded sword. During the 19th century, someone discovered a unique double-edged 13th century sword in the River Witham in northern England. It contains a cryptic 18-letter inscription that runs down its central groove that looks like this. The sword measures 38 inches long and weighs around 3 pounds. Researchers believe that it belonged to a knight and that the sharp steel blade was likely manufactured in Germany. Ever since the medieval weapon's discovery, the engraving has mystified historians, linguists, cryptographers, and other experts who have been unable to decipher its meaning. In 2015, the British Museum appealed to the public for help decoding the cryptic lettering. Countless people responded with theories ranging from outlandish to plausible, but none ultimately checked out. They suggested a myriad of languages, including Latin, Sicilian, Welsh, and more. One particularly interesting proposal, put forth by a Dutch scholar, stated that Saxon swords in particular often had inscriptions on them that didn't actually say anything, because the people buying them or making them were illiterate. People wanted swords with their names or other cool inscriptions on them, and they could recognize the symbols, but they couldn't actually read. At the end of the day, experts are still hoping to get to the bottom of the mystery and are looking for help in solving the encoded Crusader sword. Skyquakes. There are various names for skyquakes depending on where you live in the world, including Barisal guns, Uminari, mist puffers, Lagoni, and Retumbos. Regardless of what you call them, they are mysterious booming sounds that come out of nowhere, usually when there is a clear blue sky. Have you ever experienced a skyquake? Let me know in the comments below. I haven't. Apparently they are so loud that they produce shock waves that can make buildings vibrate. It is a sound resembling the explosion of a heavy piece of artillery that can be accounted for by none of the known laws of nature, writer James Fenimore Cooper wrote in 1850. The report is deep, hollow, and imposing. The lake seems to be speaking to the surrounding hills, which send back the echoes of its voice in accurate reply. Cooper's statements ring true today. Skyquakes have been more or less classified as sounds generated by some sort of distant activity, whether it be storms, earthquakes, mining, or military activity. Some of the booms may be caused by tests of secret military aircraft. A series of booms in Clintonville, Wisconsin kept people awake for 3 nights, and it turned out to be caused by a swarm of small earthquakes, but nobody truly knows where they originate from or what causes them. In late 2020, a team of seismologists published a study narrowing down these theories based on seismological data recorded between 2013 and 2015 in North Carolina. In the process, they ruled out earthquakes as a possible cause for skyquakes and concluded that they believe the phenomenon is caused in the atmosphere itself, not in the ground. but what exactly skyquakes are and what causes them remain a mystery. The Stargate of Sri Lanka. Located on a 40-acre plot of land in Sri Lanka, Ranmasu Uyana is a park containing the beautiful gardens enjoyed by past royals. The gardens themselves and the nearby Tessawewa Reservoir were built in the 3rd century BC, during the time of King Tissa. Pavilions and other small buildings, which partially survive today, were built between the 8th and 9th centuries. The park contained a highly sophisticated water system for its time, which sourced water from the nearby reservoir. The water ran through the park's baths and other features and was deposited into neighboring rice fields. One curious artifact at the site, a carved boulder called the Sakwala Chakraya, has gained widespread attention from conspiracy theorists who believe that it acted as a stargate or an interface between ancient humans and aliens from outer space. Proponents of this theory claim that the engraving dates back some 6,500 years. The alleged Stargate contains a strange circular inscription measuring 6 feet in diameter, filled with small circles with crosses on the inside. 4 seats face the boulder. One of the more imaginative theories about the carving holds that extraterrestrials mined gold at Ranmasu Uyana using advanced techniques unknown to the modern world. This and other abstract hypotheses suggest that there is a connection between the Sakwala Chakraya and architectural features of Peru and ancient Egypt. Mainstream archaeologists scoff at these notions, and with good reason. Not only do such claims lack evidence, they have the harmful effect of invalidating Sri Lanka's unique history and cultural identity. In the words of University of Kelaniya archaeology professor Raj Somadeva, who spoke with the country's Daily News in 2011, if someone is bringing up such a theory, he's doing it to fulfill neo-colonial goals. The meanings of the carvings and designs need to be studied and admired in their own historical and cultural context. Muziris. During the early 2000s, archaeologists excavated at a site in Patanam, a village in southern India where strange beads surfaced every year during monsoon season. Over the following years, they discovered a plethora of artifacts, including Roman amphorae, a 2,000-year-old dugout canoe, building foundations, glass beads, gold ornaments, iron, lead, and copper tools, and a wharf-like structure. Dr. P.J. Cherian, director of the Kerala Council for Historical Research, believes that the site is the lost city of Muziris, one of India's most important trading posts during the 1st century BC that specialized heavily in the black pepper trade. Muziris was highly praised by ancient poets and writers, including Pliny the Elder, but it became more or less absent from written records after the 5th century, and eventually became more mythical than real in the eyes of many. If archaeologists have in fact found Muziris, it begs the question of why this city apparently collapsed. Federico de Romanis, an expert in the Indo-Roman pepper trade, spoke with The Guardian in 2016, stating Muziris was entirely dependent on foreign, especially Roman, demand for pepper. He theorizes that when the Roman Empire began struggling economically during the 3rd century, its demand for pepper fell, essentially putting Muziris out of business. Many experts agree that the site is probably Muziris, but understanding this mythical lost city is going to take a lot more work. Thanks for watching! Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Bye!